I'm here today with the first installment of our read-along for Wild Swans, Three Daughters of China by Jung Chang. I have to apologize for falling behind on this. If you followed me on Twitter, you'll know that I have been sick and was unable to film, and lots of things have been happening in the past few weeks, but I'm back, and I'm sorry for everyone who was waiting, all three of you. Nothing of the postponement had anything to do with the book itself, which is fantastic. It was all external things. I'm not quite better yet, but I'm well enough to film, and so I thought that I should definitely return because this book is amazing and I wanted to share it. So this is on the first 4 chapters of Wild Swans, Three Daughters of China, and which is in my edition, about 125 pages. So the story begins. So the story is an autobiographical novel that follows the several generations of the author's family. The author is Jung Chang, and she begins the story with how her grandmother, hold on, let me read the exact line from the beginning. The very first line: "At the age of 15, my grandmother became the concubine of a warlord general, the police chief of a tenuous government of China. The year was 1924, and China was in chaos." And on my edition, there's 3 pictures. It's a little scuffed up, but this is Jung Chang's grandmother, and her mother, and herself. And so, obviously, it starts off kind of with, you know, it captivates your attention. I don't know where you are in the world, but in the part where I live, it is incredibly rare to be a concubine, and even more so at 15. And so it follows her grandmother becoming married to this concubine, and becoming married and becoming a concubine, and how that raises her father's status because he's a powerful man, and but diminishes her own. One thing that I was not expecting is how action-packed this story is. There's a lot that happens. Like within the first few chapters, her grandmother is abducting her own son out of her husband's wife's home. She is they are sneaking a somewhat dead, alive man out of a pile of dead bodies from prison. It's an incredibly eventful story, and I wasn't expecting that. And considering that it starts in 1920s China and goes up to about modern day. Andy, be quiet! Sorry, that's my dog barking in the background. I was kind of surprised that I was shocked kind of at how different it was, how shockingly different it is. I live in America, and obviously in modern times, and I think I didn't really necessarily know much about sort of before Mao came to power, that kind of China, and how it's incredibly traditional, and it really doesn't feel like it's part of the 20th century. One thing that I'm really enjoying about this is that Jung Chang, not only is her family story so eventful and so, it's honestly better than like reality television or something with all of the twists and turns that happen. But not only that, but she is able to place sort of the growing discontentment of the country and the political acts of the country in that current time frame and fit that within her family's narrative. So it helps connect it to the broader aspect of what's happening in China at this time, and I find that incredibly helpful. As a woefully ignorant American, I was some things that really stood out to me is that well, obviously, the warlord who her grandmother married is much older than her, and she is, and so she is almost certainly going to outlive him. And when she marries the warlord, that raises her father's status, but it doesn't, and I'm using the term married loosely because she has a marriage ceremony, even though she's only his concubine. But it's incredibly, but when he dies, not only is her grandmother under the possession of her, of the warlord's wife, his wife can do whatever she wants to her. Like there are accounts of wives selling their husband's concubines into brothels, and that seems so heinous, the fact that the wife has control of that, and imagine how terrifying that would be, that the wife is in control of your fate. And so, but she manages to escape that, but now that she's been a warlord's concubine, no one wants her, so it diminishes her own status, and it makes it incredibly hard for her to get married. Despite the fact that it significantly raised her father's status to such a degree that he was able to become an incredibly successful public official. There's a lot of sort of, the traditions, there's a lot of sort of like catch-22s like that I found intriguing. Like there was one moment when she marries Dr. Xia, who is a natural doctor in Chinese medicine, who she was like incredibly fortunate to marry. When she marries him, and when she's incredibly grateful to marry him, Jung Chang writes a line saying, in this time, a woman showed her love for a man by agreeing with him in everything he said. And just how this is only a few decades ago, but it's shockingly different from at least the world that I live in, and probably the world that a lot of you guys live in as well. This idea that a mute, agreeable wife is the highest compliment that you can get, and that's the sign of true love. I'm really enjoying this. I kind of want to read it faster, honestly, because it's just takes so many twists and turns, and it's fascinating, and Yun Chang's writing style is just superb. The only sad thing is that my book is beginning to fall apart. Some of the pages are coming out because the book is so old, and as I turn them, like, this is a map that came out. These are just some of the thoughts that I had. I'm sorry I'm not able to do it in more in-depth synopsis right now. Hopefully by next week I'll be feeling better, and I'll have taken better notes and everything like that. Let me know what your reactions were in the first 4 chapters, and if there was anything that stood out to you, and if you're enjoying it. And also, commenters, feel free to talk to each other too, as well, like to respond to other people's comments, and to just get a discussion going on what you thought, on things that you liked, things that you didn't like, things that you were impressed by, and what you're really hoping to see in the future. I think I was kind of shocked by how much physical danger there is. I mean, just even thinking about like my grandparents' lives that they led during this approximate time period. I mean, there was some, but not nearly this extent. I think the and I also, I mean, I did like intellectually know that China during World War II had fought with the Allies, and then that Japan was an Axis during World War II, and that Japan had control over parts of China, but I didn't know the extent that they did, the extent of tensions and that were occurring and things. Like, I had no idea, and so Jung Chang is describing her mother's childhood and growing up, and the Japanese children will receive everything, and the Chinese children are forced to work in the dangerous factories and get the inedible food and things like that, that I mean, I didn't know. And so I really think that I feel that this is a really important book for me to read personally, just because kind of before Mao, I mean, not that I have an extensive knowledge of China post-Mao, but before that, I really have like a giant blank. So it's really one of those, I would say, like intellectual gaps that I have. So thankfully, this is an incredibly brilliant and fun and informative read. I'm really glad that I picked this up because honestly, It might not, because I have been wanting to read it for a while, but if it hadn't been for the read-along, it might have been a while since I picked it up, and once I got started, it's hard to stop. So let me all know what you think down in the comment section, and hopefully we can get a discussion going. Thank you all. Doei!